Okay. Okay, all right. This past couple of weeks has been kind of rough for many Americans, and I've been trying to understand some of it, but it's a little bit difficult to understand in some cases. So I kind of neglected some of this reading, this Bible reading, but I'll see if I can get back into it. Um, because this is what we need more than anything, is the public reading of Scripture. And it's it's hard to understand the value and necessity to, or the value of reading Scripture. It's just, you can't even understand how much good it does to be reading the public Scriptures in public. So we'll continue with our Bible study, just basic reading of the Bible, and a little bit of commentary here and there. And if you have questions, go ahead, feel free to ask them. Now 2 angels came to Sodom in the evening as Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. When Lot saw them, he arose to meet them and bowed down with his face to the ground. And he said, Now behold, my lords, please turn aside into your servant's house and spend the night and wash your feet. Then you may rise early and go your way. They said, however, No, we shall spend the night in the square. Yet he urged them strongly, so they turned aside to him and entered his house, and he prepared a feast for them and baked unleavened bread, and they ate. Before they lay down, the men of the city, the men of Sodom, surrounded the house, both young and old, all the people from every quarter. And they called to Lot and said to him, Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us, that we may have relations with them. But Lot went out to them at the doorway and shut the door behind him, and said, Please, my brothers, do not act wickedly. Now behold, I have 2 daughters who have not had relations with men. Please let me bring them out to you, and do to them whatever you like, only do nothing to these men, inasmuch as they have come under the shelter of my roof. But they said, Stand aside. Furthermore, they said, This one came in as an alien, and already he is acting like a judge. Now we will treat you worse than them. So they pressed hard against Lot and came near to break the door. But the men reached out their hands and brought Lot into the house with them and shut the door. They struck the men who were at the doorway of the house with blindness, both great and small, so that they wearied themselves trying to find the doorway. Okay, this is an interesting part of history, piece of history, the Word of God. And it's talking about 2 angels who came to Sodom. Of course, we already know their purpose of coming to Sodom because from previous chapters when they were speaking to Abraham. So Lot begged them to come in and to stay with him. They said they wanted to stay in the square, and he told them to come in to his house. So they did, and then everybody came out looking for the 2 men. Everybody from every part of the city, all the men anyway, and said they wanted to have relations with him. Now they said an interesting thing about Lot being a newcomer and wanting to be a judge. We know from other texts that the judges in Sodom were very, very corrupt, very wicked, and basically carried out the will of the people of Sodom. which was very wicked. And they mistreated and abused and killed people. There's all kinds of stories written about the injustice of Sodom and what kind of people they were. And that's basically the reason why the two men came to destroy Sodom. So they came into the house and they begged for Lot to let them have relations with the two men. And Lot offered his two daughters in place of the two men. Now, a lot of atheists or skeptics will criticize this and say that Lot did a bad thing offering his two daughters in place of the men. And it doesn't seem like they understand what kind of men these are. Of course, as we see in the text, that the men, that they were going to kill Lot, basically, and the men pulled Lot into the house, closed the door, and struck the men with blindness so that they couldn't find the door. So, for one thing, they didn't want the two daughters. For another thing, Lot didn't give them the two daughters. And for a third thing, if you're going to weigh in a balance the two daughters with the two men, the two men would have priority. I mean, if you want to take it to the level, which a lot of people want to do. So there you have it. So the Bible is holding true, and Lot is not a perfect man, but he understood who these men were, and that's that, basically. And you can't really criticize him for understanding who the two men were. So then the two men said to Lot, "Whom else have you here? A son-in-law, and your sons and your daughters, and whomever you have in the city, bring them out to the place, for we are about to destroy this place because their outcry has become so great before the Lord that the Lord has sent us to destroy it." Lot went out and spoke to his sons-in-laws who were to marry his daughters and said, "Get up out of this place, for the Lord will destroy the city." But he appeared to his sons-in-law to be jesting. In other words, they thought he was joking. When the morning dawned, and the angels urged Lot, saying, "Up, take your wife, your two daughters who are here, or you will be swept away in the punishment of the city." But he hesitated. So the men seized the hand of his wife, his hand, the hand of his wife, and the hands of his two daughters, for the compassion of the Lord was upon him. And they brought him out and put him outside the city. When they had brought him outside, one said, "Escape for your life. Do not look behind you, and do not stay anywhere in the valley. Escape to the mountains, or you will be swept away." But Lot said to them, "Oh no, my lords. Now, behold, your servant has found favor in your sight, and you have magnified your loving kindness which you have shown me by saving my life. But I cannot escape to the mountains, for disaster will overtake me, and I will die. Now behold, the town is near enough to flee, and it is small. Please let me escape there. Is it not small that my life be saved?" He said to him, "Behold, I grant you this request also, not to overthrow the town for which you have spoken. Hurry, escape there, for I cannot do anything until you arrive there. Therefore, The name of the town was called Zoar. It's interesting that there was two men. I don't know what kind of significance this would have, but there was two men. Each of them grabbed two people and dragged them out of the city. It was Lot, his wife, and his two daughters. Anyway, Lot said he would die in the wilderness and asked to go to the town. The name of the town was called Zoar. The sun had risen over the earth when Lot came to Zoar. Then the Lord rained on Sodom and Gomorrah brimstone and fire from the Lord out of heaven. And he overthrew those cities and the valley and all the inhabitants of the cities and what grew on the ground. But his wife from behind him looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. Okay, there's one interesting thing here where it says, then the Lord rained down on Sodom and Gomorrah brimstone and fire from the Lord. So in some sense it was like the Lord from earth rained down Sodom and Gomorrah brimstone and fire from the Lord in heaven. Okay, so some people, it's not clear enough or they wouldn't accept that, but that seems to be the case here. Now Abraham arose early in the morning and went to the place where he had stood before the Lord. And he looked down toward Sodom and Gomorrah and toward the valley, the land of the valley, and he saw, behold, the smoke of the land ascended like the smoke of a furnace. Thus it came about when God destroyed the cities of the valley that God remembered Abraham and sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrow, when he overthrew the cities in which Lot lived. Okay, Lot went up from Zoar and stayed in the mountains, and his two daughters with him, for he was afraid to stay in Zoar, and he stayed in the cave, he and his two daughters. When the firstborn said to the younger, our father is old, and there is not a man on earth to come into us after the manner of the earth. Okay, this is interesting that Lot asked to spare the city of Zoar so that he could flee to it, because he said he would die in the wilderness. And it ends up that he was afraid of the town of Zoar. He was afraid to stay there, so he stayed in the cave, he and his two daughters. So the firstborn said to the younger, our father is old, there's not a man on earth to come into us after the manner of earth. Come, let us make our father drink wine, and let us lie with him, that we may preserve our family through our father. So they made their father drink wine that night, and the firstborn went in and lay with her father, and he did not know when she lay down or when she arose. The following day the firstborn said to the younger, behold, I lay last night with my father, let us make him drink wine tonight also. Then you go in and lie with him, that we may preserve our family through our father. So they made their father drink wine at night also, and the younger arose and lay with him, and he did not know when she lay down or when she arose. Thus both daughters of Lot were with child by their father. The firstborn bore a son, called his name Moab. He is the father of the Moabites to this day. As for the younger, she bore a son, called him Ben-Ami. He is the father of the sons of Ammon to this day. And some people, tell stories about the Moabites and the Ammonites. I don't know. It doesn't make too much sense, some of the stories you hear. But anyway, the Moabites and the Ammonites, I'm pretty sure that they weren't that great for Israel. Weren't great friends of Israel. Okay, so we'll continue the reading. It'll be Genesis 20. We started in 19. Now Abraham journeyed from there toward the land of Negev and settled between Kadesh and Sur. Then he sojourned in Gerar. Abraham said to Sarah his wife, "She is my sister." So Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent and took Sarah. But God came to Abimelech in a dream of the night and said to him, "Behold, you are a dead man because of the woman whom you have taken, for she is married." Now Abimelech had not come near her, and he said, "Lord, will you slay a nation even though blameless? Did he not himself say to me, 'She is my sister'? And she herself said, 'He is my brother'? In the integrity of my heart and the innocence of my hand I have done this." Then God said to him in a dream, "Yes, I know that in the integrity of your heart you have done this, and I also kept you from sinning against me, therefore I did not let you touch her. Now therefore restore the man's wife, for he is a prophet, and he will pray for you, and you will live. But if you do not restore her, know that you shall surely die, you and all who are yours." Okay, so Abimelech rose early in the morning and called all his servants and told all these things in their hearing, and the men were greatly frightened. There are a lot of people criticize Abraham for saying that Sarah was a sister. She was a sister, half-sister. It wasn't a lie, but he was basically not telling the whole truth for fear of his life, apparently. And in spite of that, the Lord protected both Abimelech and Abraham and Sarah. So Abimelech rose early in the morning, called all his servants, and told them all these things in their hearing, and the men were greatly frightened. Then Abimelech called Abraham and said to him, "What have you done to us? How have I sinned against you that you have brought on me and on my kingdom a great sin? You have done to me things that ought not be done." And Abimelech said to Abraham, "What have you encountered that you have done this thing?" Abraham said, because I thought, surely there is no fear of God in this place, and they will kill me because of my wife. Besides, she actually is my sister, the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother, and she became my wife. And it came about when God caused me to wander from my father's house, that I said to her, "This is the kindness which you will show me. Everywhere you go, say of me, he is my brother." So in other words, this was like it was understood beforehand that Sarah would say he's my brother, and it wasn't necessarily at the time of going to these different places that he tried to trick people, but that it was something that was prearranged beforehand, that in order for there's like a security precaution, and that's what it seems to be here to me, and so that's what happened. Abimelech then took sheep and oxen and male and female servants and gave them to Abraham and restored his wife Sarah to him. Abimelech said, "Behold, my land is before you, settle wherever you please." To Sarah he said, "Behold, I have given your brother 1,000 pieces of silver. Behold, it is your vindication before all who are with you, and before all men you are cleared." Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech and his wife and his maids so that they bore children. For the Lord had closed fast all the wombs of the household of Abimelech because of Sarah, Abraham's wife. Now this is these records in Genesis cover vast amounts of times at times, that, as you'll notice when you read through. So there was enough time passing where all the wombs of the household of Abimelech, because of were closed, they couldn't bear any children. They weren't bearing any children, and because of Sarah. So it's kind of a condensed version of a large amount of time, because back in the day things took a lot of time to take place. That it wasn't like today where things are immediate. Things happen on a day-by-day basis. A lot of things took more time back in the day. That should be self-explanatory. Genesis 21. Then the Lord took note of Sarah, as he had said, and the Lord did for Sarah as he had promised. So Sarah conceived and bore a son to Abraham in his old age, at the appointed time of which God had spoken to him. Abraham called the name of his son who was born to him, whom Sarah bore to him, Isaac. Then Abraham circumcised his son Isaac when he was 8 days old, as God had commanded him. Now Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. Sarah said, God has made laughter for me. Everyone who hears will laugh with me. And she said, who would have said that to Abraham, that Sarah would nurse children? Yet I have borne to him a son in his old age. The child grew and was weaned, and Abraham made a great feast on the day that Isaac was weaned. Now Sarah saw the son of Hagar the Egyptian, whom she had borne to Abraham, mocking. Therefore she said to Abraham, drive out this maid and her son, for the son of this maid shall not be heir with my son Isaac. The matter distressed Abraham greatly because of his son. But God said to Abraham, do not be distressed because of the lad and your maid. For whatever Sarah tells you, listen to her, for through Isaac your descendants shall be named. And of the son of the maid I will make a nation also, because he is your descendant. So Abraham rose early in the morning and took bread and skin and water and gave them to Hagar, putting them on her shoulder, and gave her the boy and sent her away. And she departed and wandered about in the wilderness of Beersheba. When the water in the skin was used up, she left the boy under one of the bushes, which made sense. So it was like a survival situation. Then she went down and sat down opposite it, about a bow shot away, for she said, do not let me see the boy die. And she sat opposite him and lifted up her voice and wept. God heard the lad crying, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, what is the matter with you, Hagar? Do not fear, for God has heard the voice of the lad where he is. Arise up, lift up the lad, hold him by the hand, for I will make him a great nation, or a great nation of him. Then God opened her eyes and she saw a well of water, and she went and filled the skins with water and gave the lad a drink. God was with the lad, and he grew, and he lived in the wilderness and became an archer. He lived in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took a wife for him from the land of Egypt. Okay, so this would be an angel of God called the Hagar. Okay, this is another account of basically the same event I think we read earlier. Now it came about at the time that Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of his army, spoke to Abraham, saying, God is with you in all that you do. Now therefore swear to me here by God that you will not deal falsely with me or my offspring or with my posterity, but according to the kindness that I have sworn to you, you shall show to me and to the land in which you have sojourned. Abraham said, I swear. Okay, but Abraham complained to Abimelech because of the well of the water which the servants of Abimelech had seized. And Abimelech said, I do not know who has done this thing. You did not tell me, nor did I hear of it until today. Abraham took sheep and oxen and gave them to Abimelech, and the two of them made a covenant. Then Abraham set 7 ewe lambs of the flock by themselves. Abimelech said to Abraham, what do these 7 ewe lambs mean, which you have set by themselves? He said, you shall take these 7 ewe lambs from my hand, so that it may be a witness to me that I dug this well. Therefore he called the place of that place Beersheba, because there the two of them took an oath. So they made a covenant at Beersheba. And Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of his army, arose and returned to the land of the Philistines. Abraham planted a tamarisk tree at Beersheba, and there he called on the name of the Lord, the everlasting God. And Abraham sojourned in the land of the Philistines for many days. Genesis 22. Now it came about after these things that God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham. And he said, here am I. It's a Hebrew word, Hineni. He said, take now your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the land of Moriah. Okay, Moriah. And offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains which I tell you. So Abraham rose early in the morning and saddled his donkey and took 2 of his young men with him and Isaac his son, and he split wood for the burnt offering, and arose and went to the place which God had told him. On the 3rd day Abraham raised his eyes and saw the place from a distance. Abraham said to his young men, stay here with the donkey, and I and the lad will go over there. We will worship and return to you. Abraham took the wood and the burnt offering, laid it on Isaac his son, and he took in his hand the fire and the knife. So the 2 of them walked on together. Isaac spoke to Abraham his father and said, my father. And he said, here am I, my son. And he said, behold the fire, the wood, but where's the lamb for the burnt offering? Abraham said, God will provide for himself the lamb for the burnt offering, my son. So the 2 of them walked together. Now remember, Abraham's a prophet. And he said that the 2 of them will return. Abraham said to his young men, stay with the donkey. I and the lad will go over there, and we will worship and return to you. Okay, then they came to the place of which God had told him, and Abraham built the altar there, and arranged the wood, and bound his son Isaac, and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Abraham stretched out his hand, took the knife to slay his son, but the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Hineni, here am I. He said, do not stretch out your hand against the lad, and do nothing to him. For now I know that you fear God, since you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me. Then Abraham raised his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him a ram caught in the thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered him up a burnt offering in the place of his son. Abraham called the name of the place, the Lord will provide, as it is said today, in the mount of the Lord it will be provided. Now there's so much here, there's so much content here that we really have to go through it several times. Okay, we'll go back to Isaac. Spoke to Abraham his father and said, my father. He said, here am I, my son. He said, behold the fire, the wood, but where's the lamb for the burnt offering? Now here's the prophecy. This is the prophetic statement that Abraham said. God will provide for himself a lamb, the burnt offering, my son. Now the statement, God will provide for himself a lamb. This is a prophecy of Christ, who would be offered up in that same location, Mount Moriah. Mount Moriah is Jerusalem. So they came to the place, and where God had told them, he built an altar, arranged the wood, bound the son, Isaac, on the altar, on top of the wood. Abraham stretched out his hand, took the knife to slay his son. But the angel of the Lord called him from heaven and said, Abraham, and he said, here am I. He said, do not stretch out your hand against the lad. Do nothing to him, for now I know that you fear the Lord God, since you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me. Okay, this might seem a little out of place, but it happens to be the practice of that time. It was a practice, it was a pagan practice, or a practice of the people, of the place, of the time, that they would sacrifice their children. It was not anything out of the ordinary. And it's something that God told him to do, and his faith was such that he knew that God would work things out, and that would make things, that he was able to raise Isaac from the dead. So this substitutionary teaching here is very clear, so that in other words, we don't have to kill ourselves for being evil, because there is a provision that God provides himself. See, this wording is very significant. Abraham said God will provide for himself a lamb for the burnt offering. And we have a substitution here, and it's not a lamb, it's a ram. So what is he talking about? On the Mount Moriah, which is Jerusalem. Okay. So now of course, the provision that God would provide for himself is through Abraham and through Isaac. So he is offering up Isaac who is basically the provision that of God providing for himself. And God told him not to hurt his son, and the ram was offered in his place. The substitution. There was a substitutionary sacrifice of a ram in the place of Isaac. It says, then Abraham raised his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him a ram caught in a thicket by his cords. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered him up for a burnt offering in the place of his son. So the substitution is very clear. And the prophecy is, in hindsight, is very clear too, where it says God will provide for himself the lamb and not the ram in Mount Moriah, in that very place in Jerusalem or outside of Jerusalem, because the mountain is both inside and outside of Jerusalem. Abraham called the name of that place, the Lord will provide, as it is said to this day, in the mount of the Lord, Mount Moriah, it will be provided. Then the angel of the Lord called to Abraham the second time from heaven and said, by myself I have sworn. By the way, Abraham, when Abraham obeyed God in offering up his son, God was proving the faith of Abraham. Some people will say, well, that was a test, but in fact it was proving his faith. Not merely testing his faith, but proving his faith. So it was to prove the faith of Abraham. That's another point. Then the angel of the Lord called to Abraham a second time from heaven and said, by myself I have sworn, declares the Lord, because you have done this thing, you have not withheld your son, your only son. Indeed, I will greatly bless you, and I will greatly multiply your seed as the stars of the heaven, and as the sand which is on the seashore. And your seed shall possess the gate of their enemies. In your seed all the nations of the earth shall be blessed. Because you have obeyed my voice. So Abraham returned to his young men, and they arose and went together to Beersheba, and Abraham lived at Beersheba. Or Beersheba. That is the correct pronunciation. Now it came about after these things that it was told to Abraham, saying, behold, Milcah also has borne children to your brother Nahor. Uz his firstborn, and Buz his brother, Kemuel, and father of Aram, and Chesed, and Hazel, and Pildash, and Jidlaph, and Bethuel. Bethuel became the father of Rebekah. These 8 Milcah bore Nahor, Abraham's brother. His concubine, whose name was Remuel, and also bore Teba, Geham, Tahash, and Makkah. Okay, so we have Rebecca there mentioned. And we'll go on to the next chapter, Genesis 23. Now Sarah lived 127 years. These were the years of the life of Sarah. Sarah died in Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan, and Abraham went to the mount to mourn for Sarah and to weep for her. Okay, then Hebron, you know, Hebron to the Jews, of course, is a holy place. This is not a place for anyone else. This is a place for, it's a holy place to the Jews. Okay, the land of Canaan. And Abraham went in to mourn for Sarah and to weep for her. Then Abraham rose from before his dead and spoke to his sons of Heth, saying, I am a stranger and a sojourner among you. Give me a burial site among you, that I might bury my dead out of my sight. Sons of Heth answered Abraham, saying to him, Hear us, my lord. You are a mighty prince among us. Bury your dead in the choicest of our graves. None of us will refuse you his grave for burying your dead. So Abraham rose and bowed to the people of the land and sons of Heth. And he spoke with them, saying, If it is your wish for me to bury my dead out of my sight, hear me. And approach Ephron from the son of Zohar for me, that he may give me the cave of Machpelah, which he owns, which is at the end of his field. For the full price let him give it to me in your presence for a burial site. Now Ephron was sitting among the sons of Heth, and Ephron the Hittite answered Abraham in the hearing of the sons of Heth, even of all who went in the gates of this city, saying, No, my lord, hear me. I give you the field, and I give you the cave that is in it, in the presence of the sons of my people. I give it to you. Bury your dead. And Abraham bowed before the people of the land. He spoke to Ephron in the hearing of the people of the land, saying, If you will only please listen to me, I will give the price of the field. Accept it from me, that I may bury my dead. Then Ephron answered Abraham, saying, My lord, listen to me. A piece of the land worth 400 shekels of silver. What is that between me and you? So bury your dead. Abraham listened to Ephron, and Abraham weighed out for Ephron silver, which he had named in the hearing of the sons of Heth, 400 shekels of silver, commercial standard. So Ephron's field, which was in Machpelah, which faced Mamre, the field and cave which was in it. It's kind of interesting that the so-called quote-unquote goat herders had a commercial standard, shekels of silver. Anyway, another thing. So that Ephron's field, which was in Machpelah, which faced Mamre, the field and cave which was in it, and all the trees which were in the field that were within the confines of its borders, were deeded over to Abraham for possession in the presence of the sons of Heth, for before all who went in the gate of the city. After this, Abraham buried Sarah, his wife, in the cave of the field of Machpelah, facing Mamre, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. Now remember, I shouldn't have to remind you that God said that Abraham would possess the land of Canaan and his descendants. So the field and cave that is in it were deeded over to Abraham for a burial site by the sons of Heth. I guess we'll do one more chapter for now. And now Abraham was old, advanced in age, and the Lord had blessed Abraham in every way. Genesis 24. Abraham said to his servants, the oldest of his household, who had charge of all that he owned, Please place your hand under my thigh, and I will make you swear by the Lord, the God of heaven, the God of earth, that you shall not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites among whom I live, but you will go to my country and to my relatives and take a wife for my son Isaac. The servant said to him, suppose the woman is not willing to follow me to this land. Should I take your son back to the land from where you came? Abraham said to him, beware that you do not take my son back there. So Abraham didn't want his son going back to where he came from, and he did not want to take a wife from the Canaanites. So that's interesting. But anyways, beware that you do not take my son back there. The Lord, the God of heaven, who took me from my father's house. Oops, I messed up. Hold on a second. Okay, the Lord, the God of heaven, who took me from my father's house and from the land of my birth, and who spoke to me and swore to me, saying, to your descendants I will give you this land. He will send an angel before you, and you will take a wife for my son from there. But if the woman is not willing to follow you, then you will be free from this oath. Only do not take my son back there. So the servant placed his hand under the thigh of Abraham, his master, and swore to him concerning this matter. Then, that might have been a custom of the time or something or other. And, the scoffers will scoff. To the pure, all things are pure. To the defiled and unbelieving, nothing is pure. Just keep that in mind. Okay. Then the servant took 10 camels from the camels of his master and set out with a variety of good things of his master's in his hand. And he arose and went to Mesopotamia, to the city of Nahor. He made the camels kneel down outside the city by the well of the water at evening time, the time when women go out to draw water. He said, O Lord, the God of my master Abraham, please grant me success today and show loving kindness to my master Abraham. Behold, I am standing by the spring, and the daughters of the men of the city are coming out to draw water. Now may it be that the girl to whom I say, please let down your jar so that I may drink, and who answers, drink, and I will water your camels also, may she be the one whom you have appointed for your servant Isaac, and by this I will know that you have sworn loving kindness to my master. Before he had finished speaking, behold, Rebekah, who was born to Bethuel, the son of Milcah, the wife of Abraham's brother Nahor, came out with her jar on her shoulder. The girl was very beautiful, a virgin, and no man had relations with her. And she went down to the spring and filled her jar and came up. Then the servant ran to meet her and said, please let me drink a little water from your jar. She said, drink, my lord, and she quickly lowered her jar to her hand and gave him a drink. Now when she had finished giving him a drink, she said, I will draw also for your camels, until they have finished drinking. So she quickly emptied her jar in the trough and ran back to the well to draw, and she drew for all his camels. Meanwhile, the man was gazing at her in silence to know whether the Lord had made his journey successful or not. Okay, and this is what he said. He said, please, behold, I'm standing in spring water, and please let down your jar. Okay, behold, okay. He said, O Lord, the God of my master Abraham, please grant me success today and show loving kindness to my master Abraham. Behold, I am standing by the spring, and the daughters of the men of the city are coming out to draw water. Now may it be that the girl to whom I say, please let down your jar so that I may drink, who answers, drink, and I will water your camels also. May she be the one whom you have appointed for your servant Isaac, and by this I will know that you have sworn loving kindness to my master. And that's exactly what happened. Okay. When the camels had finished drinking, the man took a gold ring weighing half a shekel and 2 bracelets for her wrist weighing 10 shekels in gold, and said, whose daughter are you? Please tell me, is there room for us to lodge in your father's house? She said to him, I am the daughter of Bethuel, son of Milcah, whom she bore to Nahor. Again she said to him, we have plenty of both straw and feed and room to lodge. Then the man bowed low and worshipped the Lord. He said, blessed be the Lord God of my master Abraham, who has not forsaken his loving kindness and his truth toward my master. As for me, the Lord has guided me in the way to the house of my master's brothers. Then the girl ran and told her mother's household about these things. Now Rebekah had a brother whose name was Laban, and Laban ran out to the man at the spring. When he saw the ring and the bracelets on his sister's wrists, and heard the words of Rebekah his sister, saying, this is what the man said to me, he went to the man, and behold, he was standing by the camels at the spring. And behold, he said, come in, blessed of the Lord, why do you stand outside, since I have prepared the house and the place for the camels? So the man entered the house, and then Laban unloaded the camels, and he gave straw and feed to the camel, and water to wash his feet, and to the feet of the men who were with him. But when food was set before him to eat, he said, I will not eat until I have told my business. And he said, speak on. So he said, I am Abraham's servant. The Lord has greatly blessed my master, so that he has become rich, and he has given him flocks and herds and silver and gold and servants and maids and camels and donkeys. Now Sarah, my master's wife, bore a son to my master in her old age, and he has given him all that he has. My master made me swear, saying, you shall not take a wife from my son, my daughters of the Canaanites, in whose land I live. But you shall go to my father's house, to my relatives, and take a wife for my son. I said to my master, suppose the woman does not follow me. He said to me, the Lord before whom I have walked will send his angel with you to make your journey successful, and you will take a wife for my son from my relatives, from my father's house. Then you will be free from the oath when you come to my relatives, and if they do not give her to you, you will be free from my oath. So I came today to the spring and said, O Lord, the God of my master Abraham, if now you will make my journey on which I go successful. Behold, I am standing by the spring. May it be that the maiden who comes to draw, and to whom I say, please let me drink a little water from your jar, and she will say to me, you drink, and I will draw for your camels also. Let her be the woman whom the Lord has appointed for my master's son. Behold, I had finished speaking in my heart, and behold, Rebekah came out with her jar on her shoulders, and went down to the spring and drew. And I said to her, please let me drink. She quickly lowered her jar from her shoulders and said, drink, and I will water your camels also. So I drank, and she watered the camels also. Then I asked her and said, whose daughter are you? And she said, the daughter of Bethuel, Nahor's son, whom Milcah bore to him. And I will put the ring on her nose and bracelet on her wrists. And I bowed low, worshiped the Lord, and blessed the Lord and the God of my master Abraham, who had guided me in the right way to take the daughter of my master's kinsman for his son. So now, if you are going to deal kindly and truly with my master, tell me, and if not, let me know, and that I may turn to the right hand or left. Then Laban and Bethuel replied, the matter comes from the Lord, so we cannot speak to you bad or good. Here is Rebekah before you. Take her, go, and let her be the wife of your master's son, as the Lord has spoken. When Abraham's servant heard their words, he bowed himself to the ground before the Lord. The servant brought out articles of silver and gold, articles of gold and garments, and gave them to Rebekah, and he also gave precious things to her brother and to her mother. And he and the men who were with him ate and drank and spent the night, and they rose in the morning. He said, send me away to my master, but let her brother and her mother. But her brother and her mother said, let the girl stay with us a few days, say 10. Afterwards she may go. She said to them, do not delay. He said to them, do not delay, since the Lord has prospered my ways. Send me away that I may go to my master. They said, we will call the girl and consult her wishes. Then they called Rebekah and said to her, will you go with this man? And she said, I will go. Thus they sent away their sister Rebekah and her nurse with Abraham's servant and his men. They blessed Rebekah and said to her, may you, our sister, become thousands of 10,000s. May your descendants possess the gates of those who hate them. Then Rebekah rose with her maids, and they mounted the camels and followed the man. So the servant took Rebekah and departed. Now Isaac had come from going to Beer-lahai Roi, for he was living in the Negev. Isaac went out to meditate in the field toward the evening, and he lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, camels were coming. Rebekah lifted up her eyes, and when she saw Isaac, she dismounted from the camel. She said to the servant, who is that man walking in the field to meet us? And the servant said, he is my master. Then she took her veil and covered herself. The servants told Isaac all the things he had done. Then Isaac brought her into his mother's Sarah's tent, and he took Rebekah, and she became his wife, and he loved her. Thus Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. Okay. That's it's a pretty good reading. This doesn't show, but I guess it's working. Let me try to see what's going on here. This thing. I gotta see if there's any questions. If anybody's got, I guess there's no questions here. So, I guess that's good enough. Guess that'll bring our scripture reading to a close. So, I hope God blesses everyone who hears this reading, and may have a great weekend and be